I am a native of Dutch Cove in Canton here, and I actually live in the house that I grew up in. My father built the house. My father was Quay Smathers, and I work at the North Carolina Arboretum. I am the greenhouse manager there, and I will soon be starting my 25th year there, and enjoy plants and being outdoors and anything to do with greenhouses I really enjoy doing. And I enjoy being out with my dog and my husband and just enjoying what we can do with our hands, and canning and freezing and growing a vegetable garden, those kinds of things. I grew up in a musical family. My father, Quay Smathers, sang, played the guitar a good bit as a young man growing up. And as my sisters and I became teenagers, he started putting musical instruments in our hands. And so my sister Liz played the fiddle, and my older sister Cynthia started learning to play the bass fiddle. And Daddy bought a banjo and put it in my hand, and I learned to play the clawhammer style banjo. And the four of us became the Dutch Cove Old Time String Band, and we traveled a lot. We played a lot of music. We did an album, and the name of it was Sycamore Tea, which is named after an old song. So we played old style music that was the forerunner of the bluegrass style, and did that for years and years and years. And we actually competed a lot in festivals, and often won the best band, and traveled really a lot in the Southeast and up into Michigan and that area. That's sort of how I got into it. And at the time, Daddy had really stopped playing music, but I guess the way it all really began was my sister Liz had signed up to take violin lessons at Canton Middle School, and she was in like her first quarter, I guess, of violin, and the teacher retired and they couldn't find anybody to replace her. And so Daddy had already bought Liz a violin. He hooked up with an old friend of his that used to play mountain music with. Aldi Smathers was his name, and then also Luke Smathers, who had the Luke Smathers String Band. And we would spend every Saturday night either at their house or our house, going back and forth. And that's really how it all got started, was just them trying to teach Liz how to play the fiddle. And I wasn't too interested in it, and I would stay in my bedroom listening to Jimi Hendrix and rock and roll and those kinds of things, but still I would be hearing the music, and it gradually sort of seeped into my brain to where I recognized the tunes. And then when Daddy bought the banjo for me, that was sort of the beginning of the group there. And so we played for years, and then Daddy got till he wasn't able to travel very far. He had heart attacks and wasn't able to travel and play as much anymore. And so Liz's husband, Lynn, had joined the band, as he was also a fiddler, and my husband, Zeb, played guitar, and he joined the band. And so we continued for several years after that. And then Liz and Lynn moved to Ohio, where they still play a lot of music, and just sort of dropped it myself. I got till I wasn't really that interested in it anymore. If I had time on my hands, there were other things I wanted to do, and so I had sort of reached a stage of burnout. But I did teach several people how to play banjo, and so many of them went on and made such fantastic banjo players. I love to hear them now to play, and there's no way I could keep up with them. They're so talented, but that's sort of how that all happened. And also at that time, we always had an event at Morningstar Methodist Church in September called Old Folks Day. And that was always the second Sunday in September. And it was sort of like a homecoming, with the worship service and dinner on the ground. And a lot of homecomings in the afternoons will have like quartet singing. But at Old Folks Day at Morningstar, we have the shape note singing. And so that's an old style of music that was developed back in the 1800s. And the song that we use is called the Christian Harmony. That's the songbook that we use. It was published in 1866 by William Walker out of Spartanburg, South Carolina. So Daddy grew up hearing that music and learning how to sing the shapes. And he recalled riding to Morningstar in a wagon with a mule pulling the family to church. And they would have their services at Morningstar and sing from the Christian Harmony Songbook. And I brought one with me today. It's, this is what it looks like, and it's a long book. The old shape notebooks are long rather than more vertical like your hymnals are today. And so Daddy grew up just really taking to that and loving it. And so there weren't a lot of other singers around. There were some, but not many. And so they would have the singing every year at Morningstar Methodist and call it Old Folks Day and have the shape note singing. And so Daddy found a mentor in his uncle, and he sang out of the Christian Harmony Songbook. And so Daddy would go to him, and he would work with him and teach him how to sing the songs, how to read the shapes. And at that time, Daddy's father, my grandfather, Asbury Smathers, was leading the Christian Harmony singing on Old Folks Day. And then after that, Daddy took it over. So this music was very important to Daddy's mother. And her name was Elizabeth Bracken Smathers, and she grew up in Transylvania County. And there was singing schools taught by William Walker, who wrote the book. A lot of singing masters would go around into the different communities and teach. And so Daddy's mother learned indirectly from William Walker. She learned from another man who lived here in Haywood County at the time. And he sort of taught Mama, or my father's mother, how to sing too. So she sort of, in a sense, learned through William Walker. And so when Daddy was in his 30s, why, his mother said to him, "Promise me that you will keep this music alive and that you will keep Old Folks Day alive." And so Daddy made a promise to his mother, and at the age of 33, he took over leading Old Folks Day, the singing at Morningstar. And so it was called Old Folks Day for one reason, because it was a lot of the older folks. And back in the day, it was a huge gathering. It was after the crops had been harvested and put away, after the jellies had been made and the beans canned, and folks would ride in their wagons from long distances to come and spend the afternoon eating and visiting and singing, and of course hearing great preaching. And so the tradition was that if you were 70 years or older, why, you would get your picture made under a maple tree up at the lawn of Morningstar Methodist. And as the years went on, why, there were not very many younger singers coming on. And Daddy saw that unless he recruited some young singers, that this tradition was going to die out. And so he started about the same time, it was the same time my family had started the string band. We were going to festivals and playing. Daddy sort of saw a field ripe for the harvest, and so he would start leading shape note singing workshops. And he would just, draw in a crowd of young men or young women. Back in the day, at that time, most of them would be classified as hippies, because that's, sort of the 70s, and that was sort of what we had going on there. And he would invite them to the house, and Mama would cook for them. We had an extra guest house, and they could spend the night. They would camp in the backyard. And Daddy really reached out and mentored these people, as well as old-time musicians. And so he started getting them coming up to Old Folks Day, and that kept that tradition going. And at the same time, there was a singing in Etowah on the second Sunday in May, and the first Sunday in May and the first Sunday in September. And so Daddy would travel over to Etowah every year to sing, and the singers from Etowah would come over to Morningstar. And so Daddy just kept nurturing these young folks, and he would tell the older folks, when he would call on people to lead a song, he would say, now I'm going to give some of the younger people an opportunity to sing and an opportunity to lead. And he said, I want you to welcome them and encourage them, because they've got to learn too. And so Daddy really built up a huge harvest of singers. And I believe it was in 1970 he received the North Carolina Folk Heritage Award for preserving the shape note singing. And so the tradition has carried on very well, and there's a large flock now of singers. And there's a website, christianharmony.org, and you can go to that website and it will give you a list of singings. And there are singings every weekend all over North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Virginia, all over the place. And so if you're interested, you can go to those singings and learn how to sing. And so we've come to the point now where a lot of the people that Daddy had taught how to sing, those younger folks, we're now the old folks. And so once again, I'm seeing this tradition dwindle down. And so I became very concerned that I wasn't going to have enough singers showing up on Old Folks Day to even be able to do the singing. And so my sister and I started the Quay Smathers Memorial Singing School, and that is at the Smathers house in Clyde, and that is the second Saturday in April. And it's an all-day class where we teach the shapes, which I haven't explained that yet, but I'll get into what exactly shape note singing is. And it's an all-day class where we teach the shapes, the rudiments of music basically, and by the end of the day we have a crowd of people singing. And then we try to encourage them to continue to go out and go to other singings and continue to learn. And we've had to cancel it for the past 2 years because of the pandemic. But I was able last year to bring some of those singers to my house once a month for further lessons to try to nurture them on, and hopefully we will be able to get to do that again. But the singing schools, the singing masters that went around to teach this style of music usually spent 10 days in the community. And they would teach adults and children. They would set up out under a tent or in a church or in a school building or wherever, and it was 10 nights of classes, and by the 10th day, the 10th night, you had a really good singing because these people had learned all about it and how to sing. So what is shape note singing? It was a system that was devised to teach people how to learn to sing without knowing how to read musical shapes or understanding the difference in the intervals of music. So if you think of a staff of music where you have the 5 lines, I believe that's Every Good Boy Does Fine, and the 4 spaces, face, F-A-C-E, those represent your musical notes. Most people don't know that. Even to this day, a lot of people don't know that. I myself struggle with that. So the shapes were devised so that you would learn to sing the songs by reading the shapes. And so you go with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And so do is like a sort of angled, like a brick of gold. Re is like a moon, a half moon. Do, re, mi is a diamond. Fa is a flag. Sol is a circle. La is a square. Ti is like a triangle. And all the way back up to do. And so when someone goes to sing the song, if you always have someone to lead the song, and someone will pitch the tune for you. And the idea of pitching it is getting it into a key where everyone is comfortable, because we're not playing this with any instruments. We're not using pianos or guitars. This is completely without any kind of accompaniment. And so you want to pitch the song in a key that is comfortable to sing at. And a lot of the songs in church hymnals and even in the old Christian harmony books are pitched in keys that are too high for people to sing. And so I find myself on Sunday mornings singing out of a hymnal, and I don't care what the song is. Usually I have to lower my voice range to an octave lower, and I can almost sing bass better than I can sing, the soprano parts. And so this allowed the singers to pitch the song in a key where they were comfortable to sing it. And Daddy always said you wanted to pitch it where it was high enough that it wasn't so high that the high voices couldn't reach the high notes, but you didn't want to strangle the basses either. You didn't want to pitch it so low that the basses couldn't reach those low notes. And so it's called a movable do. And so it doesn't matter if, as Daddy would say, if the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, da is, la, ti, do is in this book, if it's strung out on a clothesline, if the shapes are written on a piece of paper, lying on a desk, they're always going to have the same interval between themselves. So do to re is always the same interval. Do to mi is always the same interval. So it would be like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, 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 and you work in the shapes in between there. And so I didn't plan on singing for you, but I might just try to lead, just sing a song that I like really well. It's called Passing Away. It's an old one. Of course, all of these are old. So it's on page 130 here. And again, this book is a reprint from the 1866 copy. And so, and I also have this on the CD I brought so that you could hear all the shapes of it too. And I'll point out also that there are 4 sets of staffs in this book on the songs, and so the first 5 lines are the tenor or the high voices. The second set of lines, the second staff, are the alto voices. The third set of staff are the lead, or what's called the treble voices, and the fourth set is the bass. And so we're singing in harmony, and that was another reason this was developed, was to teach people how to sing in harmony, because they didn't know how. They moved here from, Germany, Ireland, Scotland, wherever. They weren't able to bring their pianos or their guitars, so they didn't have music to sing by. And at a lot of the camp meetings and services they had, there were no books to sing from. And so the pastor or the song leader might line out the words to the song. And so he might sing something like, "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound," and then the congregation would in turn sing that back. "That saved a wretch like me," and then they would in turn sing that back, but they didn't have a basis for a melody. And so the singing just became very, very hard to sing to or sing with. There was no harmony, there was no melody really, it was just scattered everywhere. And so the beautiful thing about Christian harmony singing, shape note singing in general, is that the harmonies and the notes are so far apart, the chords are so far apart that you couldn't really play it on a piano if you wanted to, because the staffs and all the notes are so far apart. So this song, Passing Away, is a really old one, and in this style that we sing in this region is called the Blue Ridge style of shape note singing. My feelings on it is that there's a lot of different traditions in different states, different areas, and some people that sing out of Christian harmony books like to sing as fast as they can, as loudly as they can. They try to compete with each other on how loud they can project, and they're not really singing in harmony. And so the Blue Ridge style, it's slower. It is in melody with each other, with harmony with each other, not out competing. And there's also ornamentation in it. And ornamentation is a way of sort of maybe slurring a note or emphasizing a note. And a lot of that was copied actually from the American ballads, or from the Scottish and European ballads. You think of hearing ballad singers, how they might sort of go up at the end of a note, or really emphasize that note. And so there's a lot of that in this region. So the way this song is written, I'm going to sing the lead line, and so I'm going to sing the shapes first. And that's what we do, is we always sing the shapes first, and that helps people to learn their parts. And so this one would go, do, la, 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 so, do, 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 so, do, do, re, mi, do. Do, la, 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 so, do, 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 so, do, do, re, mi, do. Do, do, mi, do, la, la, do, re, mi, do, ti, do. Do, do, mi, do, la, la, do, re, mi, do, ti, do. And I'll just sing you one verse of it. So it would be, and must I be to judgment brought and answer in that day? For every vain and idle thought and every word I say, we are passing away. We are passing away. We are passing away to the great judgment day. So that's slow. I was at a singing a couple of years ago in West Asheville, and someone called on this tune, and they sang it like, it sounded to me like a train chugging along. It's like, we are passing away, we're passing away, we're passing away. And when you start singing it that fast, you start losing the harmonies, you start losing what the words are, you start losing what it's saying, you know, what the poetry is. And these are all spiritual songs. So if you don't take your time and savor the moment and savor the sound of it, you're losing a lot out of it. And so that's what we like to teach at the Quay Smathers Memorial Singing School. And we have teachers that will teach the treble, which are the high voices, or excuse me, the tenor, which is the high voices, and the alto section, and then the lead or the treble and the bass. And we go into the different rooms that are in the Shook Smathers house. And that house itself is a treat because it was built back in the 1700s, and it's on the National Register of Historic Sites. And the old furniture, original beams, all that's in there. So it's a beautiful place to go. And we have our classes in what's called their visitor center, which is just like a big classroom or a gathering room. But then we break out and go into the house to break into the parts. And at the end of the day, we all come back together and then we sing. And so that program, that is a free program. And so the website for that is www.qssingingschool.org, and it's Q like Quacky. My father's name was Quay, so qssingingschool.org. And so, Lord willing, we'll have it the second Saturday next April in 2022. Then Old Folks Day is always the second Sunday in September, and you're very welcome to come to that. It is the morning worship services at 11, and then at noon we spread out on the church lawn for a huge dinner on the ground, and then at 1 o'clock we go in to sing. And you're welcome to come to the entire day, or you're welcome to come just in the afternoon part for the singing, and it usually goes to about 3 or 3:30. And then, as I said, if you can look at the website, there's a lot of different singings that are going on. Many have been canceled due to the pandemic. I don't think there's anything active right now, but we're hoping by summertime that maybe there will be some active singings going on that we can pick those back up. But this music is very dear and near to my heart. And I just can, you know, my daddy would sit by himself and sing, and I listened to it. I didn't take it up as soon as my sister Liz did, but I did stay and listen to the singings at the church and would travel when we would go to Etowah, different places, but I didn't participate too much. But I would sit in those pews and I would turn to the page and I would figure out what line I was on, and I would just start learning those shapes. And then when I got in my late teens, early 20s, well, I decided, I'm ready to join and do this. And it wasn't until Daddy died in 1997, I took over the singing at Morningstar in 1998, I believe, and started learning how to lead and learning how to teach. And so it brings back many pleasant memories for me of my daddy and my uncles. And Daddy talked about, there's a song in here called Angel Band, which many people would probably know. It's a very old hymn. And that was his mother's favorite song. And he recalls waking up one night and she was in bed in her sleep. She was singing Angel Band. And her singing that woke him up. And so when my aunt was in Party Hospital, she was in her last day or two there, I took my songbook to her and I sang Angel Band. And while she never really sang Christian harmony, she said she wanted to get as far away from that mournful sounding music as she could. She recognized Angel Band, and it made that connection with her there. And so it's just something very near and dear to my heart. And as I said, there are other traditions. There's the Sacred Harp, which is sung in this area as well. It was originally more a Georgia, Alabama tradition, but it has sort of eased its way up here. It's one of those that's very fast-paced. That's one of the ones where they sing very loudly, where it's, if you can't hear yourself singing, you're not singing loudly enough, is the saying, and you want to drown out the person sitting next to you. To me, that's not really the sound that the music should have. There's New Harp of Columbia, which is a shape system that's very similar to the Christian harmony, and they're in Tennessee, and I've been over to a few of their singings, and there's a lot of different ones around. So the other thing I would like to say too is that research has been done and it's been documented that the Christian harmony singing at Morningstar United Methodist Church is the oldest singing in the United States that sings the shapes before the songs and then sings the songs. A lot of churches still sing from the book. They might have a day out of the year that they'll sing from the book, but they don't sing the shapes. And so Morningstar has continued that tradition on. And even though we weren't able to gather last year for Old Folks Day, we were having drive-in services by then, and I had a recording from Morningstar, and so our pastor played it over our sound system so that it was broadcasting out over FM so that the people in their cars could hear it. And so we still got to have that little bit of shape note singing at Morningstar this past year. And we've already talked about it this year, and if we have to, we'll go outside, but we're pretty confident that we'll be able to sing sing this year for Old Folks Day. You are welcome.